what a tremendous opportunity to share with you and to pick up. I got to get my phone together. I'm challenged. In this series from 1 Peter. My assignment tonight is 1 Peter chapter 5. 1 Peter chapter 5. If you have your copy of the scriptures, whether that be a literal copy or a virtual copy, would you join me please in 1 Peter chapter 5. I'll be reading from the New King James Version of the Bible. I'm going to focus my sermonic spotlight on verses 1 through 4. Can you do something for me? As they did in the days of Ezra, when the word of God was read, they stood and as the word of God was read. So if we could stand, if you're able to. My Bible reads as follows. As a matter of fact, I got the assignment and the title, and I'm just using that title, Shepherding the Flock of God, or Shepherding God's Flock. My Bible reads as follows. The elders who are among you I exhort, who am a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also a partaker of the glory that will be revealed. Shepherd the flock of God that is among you, serving as overseers, not by compulsion, but willingly, not for dishonest gain, but eagerly, nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, you will receive the crown of glory that does not fade away. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. Father God, how grateful we are that we are your people and the sheep of your pasture. Feed us with the manna from on high. In Jesus' name. And everybody that loves him said, Amen. Amen. Well, a mother went to her son and she said, get up, get up. And he said, I don't want to get up. I'm not getting up. She said, you've got to get up. He said, I don't want to get up. She said, you've got to. He said, give me 3 good reasons why I should get up. She said, well, number 1, today is Sunday. Number 2, church starts in 1 hour. Number 3, you're the pastor. Now, the problem in many churches, I already told you, not Calvary Chapel of Las Vegas, but in many churches, too many elders are ready to throw in the towel. And like Roberto Duran, I'm dating myself now, they get in the ring and they say, no mas, no mas. As a matter of fact, Pastoral Care Incorporated, where I got these statistics, say this about elders, about pastors, about bishops. 50% feel unable to meet the demands of ministry. 90% say ministry is different from what they expected. 33% say ministry is outright hazardous to their family. 80% of spouses want their husbands to leave ministry. 60% of PKs, pastors' kids, say they no longer attend church because of the way their parents were treated. 70% are underpaid. 50% will not last 5 years. The average stay is 4 years. 70% have an ongoing fight with depression. Wow. I couldn't believe this when I read it, so I had to research it on other sites. And they're all in the ballpark. 1,700 pastors per month in 2019 left ministry. 1,700. I thought, there's got to be a typo. It's got to be a year. And then I went to several pastoral sites, and they all said between 13 and 1700. And I looked at it. That means that in 2019, 20,400 pastors left the ministry. Wow. That's amazing to me. But as an elder, as a pastor, I know now, you may not know, and it probably doesn't happen here, but I know we're fighting against the world, the flesh, the devil, and the board. I mean, like I said, not here, but often the board of deacons becomes a board of demons. Now, you do know the difference between a deacon-possessed church and a demon-possessed church? You can cast the demons out. And so sometimes pastors get a little weary. So grateful you allow your pastor Sabbath rest. He's already 5 times the average in his tenure here. Come on, get the Lord a hand. That's a tribute to you too. Because in the average church, the pastors just get tired of God's sheep, God's sheep, God's sheep. Every time you turn around, pastor, 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 pastor. And so sometimes it wears. But when you begin to look at what Peter's talking about here, even though there are times when we grow weary in ministry, not just pastors, every leader experiences it. He says to us in this pericope, elders, pastors, I need you to be sold out, not sellouts. I need you to stick by the stuff. I need you to be like Pastor Ford told his wife Leslie, if you ever leave me, I'm going with you. She packed up to go. She said, I'm leaving. I grabbed my bag, I packed, I said, where are we going? Peter wants elders to know that your ministry is God's gift to you. But what you do with your ministry is your gift to God. Paul said it in 2 Corinthians 4, verse 1. He said, therefore, having received mercy, we have this ministry. That transformed my ministry as a young pastor. In the early years, the first 2 years, I was ready to go. I was ready to go back to service master. That's where I came from. And I was ready to leave. And then I read that verse, and I know the difference. What's justice? Justice is when God gives us what we deserve. Grace is when God gives us what we do not deserve. And mercy is when God gives us what we do not deserve. And then I realized, wait a minute, you're focusing on the problems. You forgot about the privilege. What a privilege it is that God would call you, a drug pusher, and take the drugs out of your hand and put a Bible in your hand. Carrying a pistol, and now you got the power of the Holy Spirit. And he privileged you to under-shepherd his people. I remember in the early days, I wouldn't go to the back and greet people because sometimes people lie. They don't testify, they test a lie. And I'd be in the back and they say, great message, Pastor. And I think to myself, wait a minute, you fell asleep right after the choir sat down. So I didn't want people to lie, so I would stand in front. Well, I saw a sister laugh, look at the pulpit and laugh. I'm thinking, ain't nothing funny up there, and I'm straight no chaser. And so after the service, I beat feet. I said, sis, I got to ask you something. I saw you look in the pulpit and laugh. Why were you laughing? She said, well, Pastor, I got to tell you, our pastor is an ex-drug pusher. Then I looked at our elder. He's an ex-heroin addict. And our drummer is an ex-gangbanger. God sure must be desperate these days. And I said to her, the operant word is X. God is not desperate. God is merciful. Amen. And so Peter must have been doing a Lou Rawls. Now, if you're 50 and under, you don't know what I'm talking about. But don't date yourself by lifting your hands. But Lou Rawls had a song called I'm Gonna Take a Stroll Down Memory Lane. Anybody old enough to remember that song? Oh, okay. You don't mind telling your age. he must be going down memory lane. Why do you say that? Because remember now, this is Peter. Peter who wore peppermint socks. Peter who always let his mouth write a check his commitment couldn't cash. He leaves and denies the Lord Jesus Christ with a cuss and a curse. He was a cussing Christian and he carried a switchblade. He'd cut your ear off. And he denies Jesus. And what did Jesus do? Jesus came to get him. And he says, children, have you any meat? What was he saying? He was saying, you left ministry for fish. It's a Dr. Phil moment. How's that working for you? But here's what I love. He calls them children. They're grown men. Why you call them children? Because you belong to me. You're not your own. You've been bought with a price. And so, Peter, I gave you the keys to the kingdom. Now I'm going to restore you to ministry. Peter, do you love me? Lord, I love you. Feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? Lord, I love you. Tend my lambs. Peter, do you love me? Lord, you know all things. I love you. Feed my sheep. Where is the denial? Where is the sin? It's gone. It's under the blood. I've given you a purpose. I've given you a call. I've made you an elder. And the gifts, according to Romans 8:39, and calling of God are irrevocable. And so therefore, Peter, I need you to get off your rusty dusty. I need you to get off your blessed assurance. And I need you to fulfill your God-given destiny. Feed my sheep. I know that's what he must be thinking about here. Because what did Jesus tell him? Your love of me should determine your labor for me. If you love me, feed my sheep. That you need to understand that your affection for the Savior should determine your protection of his sheep. That's a mouthful. Yes, it is. So that love is the motivation. Feed is the occupation. So when you begin to look at the text, now let me just say this very quickly. I've been saying it quite a bit. But notice what he said, feed my sheep. Do you know what's missing? Adjectives. Adjectives modify nouns. So adjectives tell nouns how to act. Notice he said, feed my sheep. He didn't say, feed my faithful sheep, my worshiping sheep, my giving sheep. No. No adjectives. Take care of the people that I've purchased with my blood. And so what we have here, I'm going to drop them, not push them. I want you to see what Peter does here as he talks to those who are pastors, elders specifically, and to all of us in general. So just because you're not a pastor or elder, these principles apply to you as well in your ministry for the Lord. In verse 1, we have the request to the elders. In verses 2 and 3, we have the responsibility of the elders. In verse 4, we have the reward for the elders. Notice with me as we follow along as Peter leads us in this text. Verse 1, let me just repeat it. The request to the elders. He says, the elders who are among you I exhort. I who am your fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ and also a partaker of the glory that will be revealed. He makes a request. Now here's what I like about it. Why doesn't Peter just pontificate? Peter is an apostle. So he could use his apostolic authority. He could say, I'm Peter. I've been given the keys to the kingdom. That I was number one in the list of the 12 disciples. Every time that Jesus gave the list, my name was first. So listen to me because I have authority. No, he didn't do that. Why? Because you can't legislate commitment. The word enthusiasm comes from three Greek words, en theos, and the ending of it. What does it mean? In God established. Enthusiasm literally means God established in your heart. I like that. So he doesn't appeal to his authority because you can't legislate commitment. So what does he do? He says, I urge you. It's the Greek word parakaleo. Say parakaleo. Two words, it literally means to come alongside. So the Holy Spirit is called the Paraclete. In other words, he's saying, listen, I want to make an appeal. And this appeal is threefold. Now notice, first of all, I'm a fellow elder, koinonia, joint participant with you. I'm a minister. A witness of the sufferings of Christ. I'm a messenger. And an heir to the reward that God gives to faithful shepherds, majesty. He makes an appeal based on three motivations. Why are you motivated? Now, he could say call, but he doesn't. He says, my motivation is I'm a minister just like you. I'm a messenger just like you. And I have majesty waiting for me just like you. I like what he does. Notice what he does. He says, I am a fellow elder, presbyteros, present. I witness Christ's suffering, past. And I'm looking to what reward he's going to give, future. Man, he brings it in. And he wants us to understand, listen, we are going through some things. That's true. But we ought to be encouraged. Let me just tell you what happened. I went to Christ Bible Church, formerly South Shore. And it was only 40 people. And I was a student at Moody. I was a second semester freshman. And so my salary was $100 a week. And I had a family of 5, and I'm trusting God. I'm trusting God. And, I began to tell him, now, God, I'm trusting you, but, something got to change here, because I can't take care of my family like this, and I'm supposed to provide for my family, and my wife is looking at me cross-eyed. And so you know what God did? God sent somebody. Now, I got to give you the context for it. I'm in my office, and this person comes in my office, and he says, God has sent me here to do some things. And I said, okay, well, God sent everybody here to do something, so it ain't nothing new. He said, God sent me here to help you build the church. I said, okay. So, long story short, our anniversary came around. And he said, what are you going to do for your anniversary? I said, we're going to go downtown Chicago, spend a weekend, and that's it. He said, would you like to go to my resort place in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico? I said, sure, you're right. See, I didn't have to pray about that. I knew that was a God moment. And so he sent my wife and I for a week down to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, in Paradise Village. Put $3,000 in our pocket and flew us down first class. Oh, you should have seen me digging the scene with my preacher lean, woo woo. But here's my point. And all along the way, God would send people, and he would send people who would do things, and it would just be an encouragement. That's what he's trying to do here. He's saying, man, don't throw in the towel. Don't give up. No. I want to give you this request based on these motivations. Why don't you be encouraged to stay by the stuff? Here's the bottom line. Say bottom line and pass it forward. Say it with me. Elders, pastors, Christians. The trouble you're going through is for the future you're going to. That's what he's telling. You can put that on Twitter. That'll tweet. Yeah. The trouble you're going through is see how he sets it up? He says, hey, I am a minister just like you. I'm a messenger, because the word witness is martyreo. It literally means someone who is willing to back up what they believe by giving their life. I'm a witness, a messenger of the sufferings of Christ. Wow. That's it. So here's what he's saying. Elders, Christ died for you. You mean you can't live for him? Wow. He's encouraging elders to keep on keeping on. Yeah, I'm not going to try to legislate this. It's just a request. Henry Ford said this, same last name, not the same money. Coming together is a beginning. Staying together is a process. Working together is success. Wow. I tell our congregation this all the time. Many hands make light work. Teamwork makes the dream work. And Paul's saying, come on now, guys. Come on, man. Let's rally up. Come on, let's get together. Yeah, Rosemary Turner was my first missions teacher at Moody. I not only taught there for 17 years on the board and all that, I matriculated at Moody. And my first missions class, she was there. Her name was Rosemary Turner. And around the age of 26, she was engaged to be married, but her fiance said, I'm not going to be married to a missionary. And he was a prophet and didn't know that he was, because she said, well, I'm going to be a missionary. And she didn't marry him. She dedicated her life to missions, and she brought in a missionary. I'll never forget this story. Here's what he said. He said, he was in South America where there are dangerous animals, and the temperature dropped at night to where a person out there not properly covered could die of hypothermia. He said about an hour and a half before dark, one of the ladies ran to his hut and said, my daughter's missing. We've got to get the village together so that we can go ahead and find her before nightfall. Well, they had a little over 100 people in that village. They all went out to try to find that little girl, but to no avail. Darkness began to descend, and the missionary said, I told them, come on, let's go back. There's nothing else we can do tonight. Next morning, he said, one of the men ran, knocked on his hut. He said, Pastor, hey, let's go back out this morning. But this time, let's all hold hands and search for her. Well, they found her in a little over an hour, but she had died that night of hypothermia. And the missionary said the mother held her dead daughter in her arms, looked up in his face with tears in her eyes and said, if only we would have joined hands sooner. If only we would have joined hands sooner. What are we? We are ministering the mercy of the master. We are ministering the mercy of the master to the misery of the masses. He says, come together and do this. And he encourages the elders. Now, notice this. He says, who are among you. And so, what do you mean among us? When you begin to look at the verb form, it brings to mind a picture of what real shepherds would do. Well, what would real shepherds do? Here's what they would do with their flock. When they got a new flock, they would go in among their flock and they would rub against the sheep, and they would get the smell of the sheep on them, so that the sheep would relate to their shepherd by smell and by sound. Jesus said it, my sheep hear my voice and they know me. So sheep are like women, voice activated. And so he says, you're among them. Oh, is there a time when you're over? Yes. A time when you're under? Yes. But you're among them. And he gives this picture that's very, very powerful. I remember as a young pastor, I was complaining too. And I met with a group of older men. I was 30, and the youngest of those other 12 or 13 men was about 69 years old. So I'm the young buck. And I would come in every Monday. They allowed me to come because I was a new kid on the block. And every Monday I'd come and I'd say, I'm just tired of this. And blah, blah. One of them pulled me aside. Here's what he said. He said, young pastor, if you can't stand the smell of the sheep, you shouldn't be a shepherd. Peter says, listen, we need to come together. So he has a request to the elders. Notice, secondly, he gives the responsibilities of the elders. Here's what he says, verses 2 and 3. Shepherd the flock of God, which is among you. There it is again. Serving as overseers, not by compulsion, but willingly, not for dishonest gain, but eagerly, nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. Here it is. He says, you've got three responsibilities here in this text. Graze, what? Graze the sheep. Guide the sheep, guard the sheep. Now, God has called us sheep. You pray for me, I'm working on a new book. I'm calling it Leadership. And it's principles of leadership from the book of Nehemiah. Leadership, you pray for me. But here's what the Bible reveals. When God called us sheep, it wasn't a compliment. Why? Because sheep are dumb. Yep. Sheep are defenseless. Sheep are directionless. Sheep are dependent. And sheep are dirty. But here's what the shepherd does. Sheep are dumb, so he graces us. Sheep are defenseless, so he guards us. Sheep are directionless, so he guides us. Sheep are dirty, so he grooms us. See, we have a job description in 2 Timothy 4, Titus 1 and 2, and other places. But our greatest example for ministry always comes from whom? Jesus. You remember that when a preacher asks you about greatest example, it's always Jesus. Remember the little boy in the Sunday school class? Teacher said, what gathers nuts and has a bushy tail and climbs tree? He said, I want to say squirrel, but I know in this class the answer is Jesus. So what did he do? He's the greatest example. Here's what the Bible calls Jesus. John 10, he's called the Good Shepherd. In Hebrews 13, he's called the Great Shepherd. And then in 1 Peter 5:4 right here, he's called the Chief Shepherd. Each of them tells us what he does. And we are under shepherds, under the Good Shepherd, Chief Shepherd, and Great Shepherd. So then, as the Good Shepherd, he died for us. As the Great Shepherd, he lives for us. And as the Chief Shepherd, he's coming for us. Look at it. It's what I pointed out before. Past, present, future. He's given us a so great salvation. Cross, crook, crown. So that you and I understand it's complete and he's done it. Now, what he wants us to do, he says three things here I got to tell you real quick. He said we are to feed the flock, not fleece the flock. He said feed them, not for filthy lucre. What's that? It's King James, that's money. That's like one of my members have listened to somebody on TV. And he said, Pastor, I was watching this TV program, and the pastor said that there was a debt-canceling anointing that was falling, and people were running up putting money on the stage. Are you going to do that? No. That's not feeding the sheep. That's fleecing the sheep. I said, but I will give you the debt-canceling anointing in just 3 words. Give it to me, Pastor. Give it. Pay your bills. Cancel all your debt. He says, no, we're to do it. We're to feed, not fleece. We're to lead by commitment, not compulsion. And we are to lead, not lord over them. There are too many places where there are dictators who tell you, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. Look at what Peter is saying here. He's saying that there is a way that we've been called to shepherd God's sheep. Now here's what gets me. What's going on here? Now remember, when Peter wrote, pastors have probably already told you this, there was persecution going on. And remember what Jesus said, smite the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. So who do you think The devil's going to come after first Pastor Derek, the other pastors on the pastoral team. He's going to come after them. Smite the shepherd, the sheep will scatter. Look, let me just tell you this. He talks about it a little later on. I didn't get to it. I wasn't even going to try. Where he says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. If I would have got to this part, here's what I would have told you about that verse, 7 and 8. I would have told you, he walks about like a roaring lion. Don't you try to fight him. It takes a lion to beat a lion, so get the Lion of the tribe of Judah to deal with that joker. That's what you do. And so what he wants us to understand, I believe it's summarized in the paradoxical commandments of leadership. You want to hear them? Okay. You were anyway, whether you wanted to or not. Here's what it says. It's called the paradoxical commandments of leadership. People are illogical, unreasonable, and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you do good, people will accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Do it anyway. If you're successful, you will win false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. The good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Honesty and frankness will make you vulnerable. Be honest anyway. The biggest people with the biggest ideas can be shot down by the smallest people with the smallest ideas. Think big anyway. People favor underdogs but follow only top dogs. Fight for a few underdogs anyway. What you spend years building may be destroyed overnight. Build anyway. People really need help, but may attack you if you help them. Help them anyway. Give the world the best you have, and you'll get kicked in the teeth. Give the world the best you have anyway. Man, Peter is saying here, look, you've got to understand what's going on here. That you have been called by God and you're going to go through things. You know, remember, Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. One guy told me, he said, when I saw my wife, I said, the Lord is my shepherd, I see what I want. I said, okay. But, you know, it's like I did a message on new look at an old thing. So one of my books that I wrote, New Look at an Old Prayer, I didn't bring any of my old books. I just brought the new one, and they're all gone. And so, but you could go to James Ford Jr. Ministries and download my app. And so I did a new look at an old prayer, and I looked at the disciples' prayer. Then Psalm 23, a new look at an old psalm. And a lot of people are so familiar with the psalm, but they don't understand the imagery, the word picture. Let me give you one, for example, here. And this is in context of what we're talking about, a responsibility of shepherds and ministers. Here's what it says. It says, he prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Oh, that is so powerful. Here's what it literally means. That preposition could literally mean presence or period of time. What could it mean? Presence or period of time. So here's what he's saying. He's saying, he prepared a table before me in the presence of my enemies. So here's what he's saying. My enemies have to RSVP before God gives me what he wants me to have. They don't RSVP, he holds it back because he wants them to see how he blesses me. Now, you say, how does that relate to what the job of a shepherd is? Well, just like this. Here's what he would do. He would graze the sheep in the bottomland in the winter because the grass would be covered with snow in the mountaintops. And so they would graze in the grass. Grazing in the grass is a gas. Can you dig it? And when the spring came and the snow would melt, there would be lush green grass. So here's what the shepherd would do. He'd take his staff, put it in the ground, put his coat over it. so that his presence would be seen by the sheep even though he wasn't there. Then he would go where he was going to lead them, and he'd go through the path, and in the thickets, berries had grown. Some of them were good, but some of them were poison. So he'd go through and he'd pick off all of the poison berries. Then he'd get up in the mountain where the green lush grass was. He'd go through the grass because the poison snakes, I used to say poison ass, but you get your poison snakes, would come up from hibernation. So he had a mixture of oil and sulfur. He'd go through the grass, put the oil around any snake holes that he saw. Then he would go back and get his sheep, and he would lead them to green pastures. They would come through eating the berries. He had already picked the poison berries. Then they get up in the lush green grass, and they would be nibbling, and they would smell the sulfur that's on the hole, and they would draw back. The poison snakes would come up, smell the sulfur, and they would go back down. That's the word picture. He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. That's it. Christ has given his life for us, and we as shepherds need to give our lives for the people of God. Here's the last one. The reward for the elders. Here's what Peter says. He says, listen, I'm making a request. I'm sharing your responsibilities. Then he says in verse 4, and when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that does not fade away. He talks about rewards. Does anybody know how many rewards we can get as believers? Does anybody know how many rewards we can get as believers? Does anybody know? That's right, 5. In Scripture, there are 5 rewards. Let me give them to you real quick. 1 Thessalonians 2:19 says, for you are our prize and joy. That's called the soul winner's crown. So there's a crown that's given for winning souls. 1 Corinthians 9:27, he says you can receive the incorruptible crown. That's the crown for those who master the old sin nature, who walk in the flesh more than they walk in the spirit. Then there's 2 Timothy 4:8, the crown of righteousness. Those who love the doctrine of the rapture and are living like they believe the rapture could happen any moment. Then James 1:12 and Revelation chapter 2, verse 10, the crown of life. Some people say there's 6 of them, but I say there's 5. There's a head and a tail. In James, it's for those who successfully endure trial, testing, and tribulation in a God-honoring manner. Then in Revelation 2:10, it's also for those who give their life. But this crown, the crown of glory, is the shepherd's crown. It's given to those shepherds who are faithful in their duties to guarding, grazing, and guiding God's people. Listen, let me just say it. I understand it. I can't teach what I don't know, and I can't lead where I won't go. That's it. I tease, what borders our church is 79th Street. We're on one side of it. And I said to my congregation, Moses got the children of Israel across the Red Sea. Joshua got the children of Israel across the Jordan River. And I can't get some of y'all across 79th Street. Here, he says, listen, I want you to be encouraged. Don't join the $1,700 per month. What I want you to do is, here it is, let me summarize. Let your requests be your challenge. That's verse 1. Let your responsibility be your commitment. That's verses 2 and 3. Let your reward be a catalyst. That's verse 4. He wants us as elders to know. Leaders know the way, leaders go the way, and leaders show the way. Leaders know the way, that's revelation. Leaders go the way, that's demonstration. Leaders show the way, that's demonstration. And so let me just bottom line what he's saying. Yeah, feed the flock of God. So here's what I tell Christ Bible. And you could tell Pastor Derek when he comes back. Here's what I say to them. I say, what's my job? You know my congregation says? To feed and lead. And I say, what's your job? And they say, to swallow and to follow. That's it. That we're all in this together. That when we begin to look at what God has done in leadership, he wants us to understand. In light of everything that's happening, don't you dare give up. Ministry is a privilege. Let me close. I'm going to finish early. Amen. That'll make up for this morning. One of my favorite characters in history is Sir Winston Churchill. Now, he and Lady Astor, they couldn't get along. They tore Parliament up. She was the first woman elected to Parliament. On one occasion, she said to Sir Winston, Sir Winston, if you were my husband, I'd give you poison. To which he replied, Lady Astor, if you were my wife, I'd drink it. On another occasion, they were at a ball, and Sir Winston, who was fond of cigars and whiskey, was inebriated. She went up to him. She said, Sir Winston, you're drunk. He said, yes, Lady Astor, but you're ugly. And in the morning, I shall be sober. Well, here's what he did. You ought to Google it. It's really powerful. He came to speak at his alma mater, his grammar school. They asked him to give the address. They spent 20 minutes almost talking about who he was and what he had done and all of that. He got up and gave the shortest speech in the history of his alma mater. Here's what he said. He looked out at those students like I'm looking out at all of you. And I'm saying to all of the elders, all of the pastors. He looked at them and then he said in that British vogue, never give up. I say never give up. I say never give up. And with that, he sat down, and so will I. Bless the truth to our hearts, our Father. We pray for Christ's sake. And everybody that loves him say, amen. God bless you.